Welcome everybody. Good to see so many more people here. Welcome to all our visitors. Welcome to our regulars. We're starting off this week and next week talking about the identity of Otumoetai Church. Who are we? Why are we here? And hopefully it's going to be a discussion that we can start now, develop amongst ourselves and grow within ourselves and lead us on into next year, which is our anniversary year. 50th anniversary of Otumoetai being established here, and help us just understand why it is that God has us here. Because make no mistake about this is a work of God. We could sit there and think about a church as a collection of Christians and people who want to follow Jesus and who have put their lives in submission to Jesus and come together on a Sunday morning and enjoy the time of fellowship together, enjoy the thing, but really have nothing more except for just going out and living their lives. And that would be a very basic understanding, but we are more than that. We are more than that. Start the class today asking this question: why Otumoetai Church of Christ? And if you look up on this whiteboard over here, you see lots and lots of words that got scrawled up there of things, of reasons why, and understandings why. Of things that in red, of places where people have come from to be a part of this for either for a short period of time or a longer period of time. In black is the words that people wrote up about what it is, why they were drawn here, what it is that brought them here to Otumoetai, and those understandings and everything else on those lines. We have other things that were up there as to people being brought here for other reasons. There was STAMP, there was SPBC, there is AIM, there is HIM, there is just intern workers. There were people who just turned up because they heard this place was a good place to be. There are people who, like Jay, just happened to stop by on his bike because his daughter wanted to go somewhere. There are all sorts of reasons why people are here, but why did God put us here? There's been a question that I have been asking myself for the past year. It's a question that I have been, as part of my role in leadership, as part of my thing, is I'm trying to understand, why are we here? What is it that makes us special? Why is it that God has made us who we are? And so, because if we can understand that, if we can understand who we are, if we understand the identity of the Otumoetai Church, then it helps put some sort of, brings things back into focus. Like lots of things are happening around, and we can have this scattered view of all of these things that kind of happen. But if we can understand our identity, it helps bring those things back into focus, helps bring us understanding. That's why we do what we do. That's why this is important. That's why we have what we have. That's why I need to be who I am. That's why I feel the way I feel. And help bring us that into focus, and help us also bring us into focus, but also give us impotence to move forward, especially as we start looking at ourselves and say, we've been around for 50 years. We've been around for 50 years. So as I started this prayer request and everything a year ago, I started asking God, and you know what? I got nothing. I got a lot of fragments, I got a lot of ideas, I got a lot of thoughts about Otumoetai and who we are and what we've been around and everything, but nothing really gelled that much. I mean, I'm involved with a lot of things, for those of you who are unaware, I'm on the board at the Bible College, I'm on the board of the trustees here at Otumoetai, I'm an elder here at Otumoetai, I've taught part-time at the Bible College, I sometimes preach, I sometimes teach here, deliver oil and lubricants in a van 3 days a week, which is, and I try to be part of who we are, try and connect with who we are. Jay read out from Revelation chapter 2 this morning, Jesus writing a letter to the Ephesian church. And part of this journey and everything brought to remembrance, brought to mind a series that Steve did years ago. I can't remember how long ago it was, Steve, but it was quite a long time ago. Okay, Steve taught a lesson, went through the 7 churches, and as we went through those churches, it was teaching us about Jesus and his relationship to the church. But then he asked us at the end to write an eighth letter, a letter to the Otumoetai church. If Jesus was writing a letter to us. And I sat there and I was inspired by that. I was thinking about that and I was inspired by that. And I sat down and I wrote a letter to the Otumoetai church back then. And there was a number of things I wrote in that letter, and we'll get to those in a bit. But it helped me then. It started to, this just journey that I'm going on, started to bring back memories of those things. Bring back those understandings. Bring back those thoughts of things that have happened in the past. And then earlier this year, we did a series where we went through Psalm 23. And I was asked to lead a lesson on Psalm 23, verse 3, where it says, He restores my soul. End of verse 2, beginning of verse 3. He leads me beside quiet waters. He restores my soul. And suddenly things started to click. Things started to come together. The ideas that I'd had and the queries that I put towards God suddenly started to form an understanding. Because that's who we are. That's who we are. This is the place where God leads people beside those quiet waters, where God restores souls. And we're in that business. And that's what we are about. Because what that did was I sat there and thought about that, and it recalled to that letter that I had written in response to Steve, because back then I was teaching a course at the Bible College about church history, and it reminded me back then, and all of these things started coming together, all these pieces of the jigsaw puzzle started coming together, and I was learning about the history of Tauranga itself, and the church here in Tauranga, and the Church Missionary Society and everything, and the idea of Tauranga itself being a safe harbour, because that's what Tauranga means. Safe harbour. That's what this place is. We look out, we see it, we recognise it, we value it. The Maori saw it, they recognised it, they valued it, they named the place after the fact that this is a safe harbour. And in the Church Missionary Society, they came in 1838 and established a missionary society here in Tauranga, the Te Papa, what we call the Elms today, and everything. And it started and it was established. And it grew up and started out with a couple of other people, and then Brown came along and helped develop it and grew it into what we know it to be today. We know the history of it today. For those of you who are Tauranga who know the history of it, you know it. If you don't, not getting into that today. But what I will tell you is it became a place where Brown was here to share the gospel with the local people. The Maori people, the local people, people who lived here. And he travelled extensively around this area. He says, I'm here for the people of this area. And he connected with those people of those areas. But he just didn't do that and connect with those people and build relationships and forage understandings and reunited peoples that were fractured, that were torn apart. He created treaties between tribes. He got them together and convinced them that they were better together. And he taught them about Jesus. And he made them into a better people. Didn't completely change the nature of who they were or any of those things, but introduced the idea of Jesus into their lives. Not only did he do that and everything, and they established that, but it became this place where people would come and they would be a place of learning. The Elms was a place of learning. People would come and travel from other places and come and be there to learn. And to have schooling for the kids and for all sorts of other things that would happen on. And it would be there, and it was a part of who that was. But not only that, there were missionaries all around New Zealand and everything that were in work and mission and everything, and they were getting worn out and they were getting tired and they were getting sick in many cases, because life is quite unsanitary and it's pretty hard to get around New Zealand back in those days. But what they would do is when they needed a break, when they needed a time out, when they needed to get well, guess where they would come? They come here to Tauranga, the safe harbour, this place that restores souls. And they would be returned to health, they would be restored back, and then they would go back out again to go into the mission field where they would go. Some of them came here and they were so sick, they died here. You go and see in the Elms Cemetery, up there, the mission cemetery, just overlooking the bridge over the harbour, and you see some of these people. Anne Wilson was one of the early missionary ladies who was here. She wanted to be a missionary so bad she couldn't be a missionary as a woman, so she married a guy, convinced him to become a missionary, and came out here in the 30s, died of breast cancer. He carried on being a missionary through the rest of his life. But, it's that idea of coming together, and even in its early days, that's what Tauranga was. It's a safe harbour, not just for ships and stuff, but for the idea of people coming and finding a place where they can find rest, where they can find restoration, where they can be put back together again by God to go out and do the mission that God has called them for. Does that sound familiar to us? Because it should, because that's all of the things that we were writing up about who we are this morning. Those are all the things that we were writing up about who we are this morning. We were doing this thing on Psalm and everything, and I was sitting there and we were talking about, and all I had in mind was the idea that Tauranga meant safe harbour. And I didn't know it at the time, and I wasn't aware of it at the time. I had looked up previously, but I couldn't find an answer for it. But I was revealed at that time that Otumoetai means still waters. Otumoetai itself means still waters. Tauranga is a safe harbour, but Otumoetai is the still waters. It's the idea we have the tides that come in and the tides that go out, and it's very still, but it's that time between the tides. It's not coming in, it's not going out, it's just calm. And Otumoetai is that place that is just that calm place in the world of storms, in the world of everything wanting to tear us down. On the other side of Matakana Island, out in the ocean, on the other side of the Mount Mate Beach and everything, where there is surf and everything else that's coming. In here in the harbour is that safe place. That's what God has called us to be. That's who God has called us to be. That's why God has established Otumoetai being here. Wasn't long after that, I'm sitting there and I'm thinking about these things and I'm trying to formulate these things, and I go to Mike's coffee with Mike on a Wednesday morning, and there we are sitting down there, and I have not talked about this really to anybody yet. Mike sits there and he has this thing, and he opens up to Acts, and he wants to go through and talking about Paul's journey on his shipwreck journey all the way through back to Rome and everything, on his way through the Mediterranean Sea. And you know what his topic of that conversation was? The safe harbours that he has enjoyed through his life. I hadn't talked about this with anybody, and here's God sitting there, and I'm sitting there listening to Mike, and Mike is recognising and talking back to me saying, safe harbours is what it's all about. Safe harbours is what it's all about. I bring about this up. I mentioned this to the fellow elders with Chris and David, and they were kind of excited about this, and they thought, yeah, that really kind of fits. Let's see where this goes. Let's see where this develops. I shared it with the other ministers and everything, and their initial response was rather cool because of how I framed this. Let me get this straight here. They were like, because at that point in time, I saw this as a vision for who we are. And when they heard the word vision, all they heard was this is hard work, and we're going to have to change who we are, and we're going to have to change all of these things. And all of a sudden, you get a pile more work on us to have to do. But this is not a vision of who we are. This is who we are. And we came up with the idea, this is not a vision of who we are to become. This is an identity of who we are. We don't need to change anything, but like in our class, we do need to get better at it. We do need to learn and to grow. How do I get better at that? How do I understand what my role is in that? And by bringing this all into focus again, you can actually start saying, how do I get better at that? If I don't have the focus, I have no idea what I'm supposed to get better at. But if you do have the focus, then we do know what we're supposed to be getting better at. People coming in and being supported. People coming in and being a part of that growth. People coming in and recognizing they see Christ in everyone here. Place to find Jesus. Love, comfort, and challenge. There's just so many other things that we didn't actually get time to put up there, but that's what they recognize. You talk about it when people come in here, they say they feels like family. We've done countless types of surveys and everything, and it says that's what we do well. We support one another. We encourage one another. We teach one another. We're there for one another. Let's keep doing that. Let's recognize that that's who we are. In Revelation that we read this morning, Revelation chapter 2, please turn over there because I think this is important. Jesus is writing to the angel in the church of Ephesus. He recognizes the good works that they do. Verse 2, I know your works, your labor, your patience. You can't bear those who are evil. You have tested those who say they're apostles and are not, and found them liars. You have persevered, have patience, and have labored for my name's sake, and not become weary. Great things, wonderful things, doing lots of good, busy church work stuff that we all recognize, say, well done, church. Nevertheless, I have this against you, that you have left your first love. Chink Jay said you have abandoned. It's not that you've lost your first love. They left it. They abandoned it. Okay, now, I've always had a problem with this. Countless commentators, every commentator that I read will tell you that their first love is the love of Jesus, but nowhere does it actually say that there. Nowhere does it actually say that their first love is the love of Jesus. That's what he's talking about. But it is their first love. It is that which has consumed them from the beginning. And he ties that in. He says, remember, therefore, from where you have fallen, repent and do the first works. He equates the loss or the leaving behind, the abandoning of a first love with the abandoning of a first works. And there's those that need to be restored. It's those that need to be reconnected. It's those that need to be hung on to. It's those that need to be reestablished. Why? Jesus says it's really important because if you don't, I will come and remove your lampstand. Your reason for being is because God established us for being. And if we choose to go away and choose to be something that God did not establish to be, he will have no qualms in sitting there saying, well, I take that away. We sit there and think that we're here for our own purposes and our own reasons. We're not. We're here for God's reasons and for God's purposes. We're here because of the reason that God established this church here in the first place. He established this church here in Otumoetai to be a part of the Otumoetai community and to reach out to people far beyond and allow them to be the safe harbour for people to come into from all around the world. And they have. You just look at all of these red words on the thing here from all around the world, and we stopped when we ran out of room from the places that God has drawn us from to come here to be a part of who we are and send them back out again. It's like a ship that comes into the harbour, and we've seen all the ships come into the harbour, and they come in, and there's a whole lot of industry that comes around that supports them and builds them back up and restores them, and people come and work and restock them and everything that they need to go and send them back out on their journey again. Their journey is not here, their journey is elsewhere, and we are part of God's vital role of being part of that whole system of what God is doing worldwide. I remember back in the late 80s, I was dating Vanessa at the time, and so the Bible College had only been around for, a handful of years at that stage. And I remember coming up here at Otumoetai, and even in those early years, there was a weariness that had set in. And that weariness was because the church loved so much. And they had the students that were coming in to this Bible college, and they were there, and they loved the students. They were in their homes. They lived with you all, with those of you who are old enough to remember. They were here living with the members and everything. They were here for 2 years, and then they went home again, and the emotional investment in those people was so huge. There was a grieving when they left, and it became a real burden upon them. A real burden upon them. And I remember being here in Otumoetai and hearing people talking about how tough it was to sit there and let the go, and then having to start that all over again. But you know what? Here we are in 2025, and we're still doing that. We're still doing that. We're still allowing this ragtag bunch of people down over the back over here, whom we love greatly, come into our lives and share in our lives, and we share with their lives, and they come and they be a part of who we are, and we get to say goodbye. But we don't. We don't. We've just been through Missions Month, haven't we? For those of you who've been around in Otumoetai for the past month, you've been part of this, and we've seen the reports, and we've seen the things from those people, some of those people who have been here that have gone on, that are doing God's work elsewhere around the world and all these other places, and that's what God is doing through us. Each one of us, as we sit here in our pews, as we sit here and we collectively come together, as we sit here and love on one another, as we love each other, and as we love those who come in, and we sit there, and part of who we are modeling Christ to them, and they are becoming transformed. They are becoming changed into the people that God needs to be for them to be sent back out again. And all of the work in which they're doing out there is a direct result in all of the blessings that they are to people in every continent on this planet, except Antarctica. Maybe even Antarctica, I don't know. But and he is blessing people everywhere. Why? Because of us. Because we have chosen to be who God has called us to be. I was talking with some of the chaplaincy students last night that graduated last night. Great encouragement it was to be able to talk with them, and even in the small pockets of New Zealand, in the hidden places that I would possibly never even hear of again, but I do, because even some of the places that I talked about, I already had connections with last night. One of the ladies, I can't remember her name, Rotorua, she worships with Tim Symington, for those of you who know Tim. And, and I grew up with Tim in Napier, and so there's an instant connection. One of the other ladies talked about connecting with the seafarers down in Wellington and everything. We'd had a previous student who'd been down there with the seafarers, and I just recognised there's the connection. There's Manawatu, there's other places around, and they're just getting into their communities and into the prisons and everything. And God is having an influence. Why? Because of the ministries of this place. And it's just not the church. People grow up and sit there and say, I recognise I can have my own ministry from here too. Bible College is one ministry. Mary's got another ministry that's grown up from here. It's not a ministry per se of Otumoetai, but Mary's a member of Otumoetai, so therefore by de facto, it is kind of. Jill does the same thing with her ministry and everything. Why? It just doesn't have to be an Otumoetai thing, but it is a thing that is born out of growing up in Otumoetai. Saying, I can do great things for God because I have seen others do it, and I know that God can do it. And he can do it through you too. He can do it through you too. These are the discussions that we want to have. And if I can change that. No, can we change the slide? Thank you. About Otumoetai being a safe harbour. This is who we are. This is our identity. This is our understanding of who we are. Think about this week. Discuss this amongst yourselves this week. As we come to class next week, I want to discuss about what our roles are, what this actually means. What does this actually mean to live out in our lives? In our class next week and in our sermon next week. So it's just a 2-week quick class thing and everything, recognizing our identity, understanding who we are, why God has put us where we are, who God is calling us to be, the Otumoetai Church of Christ. Next thing. And this all leads on to our 50th reunion coming up next year, end of July, beginning of August. All of these stories, all of these memories, all of these understandings, the history of who we are and everything, let's understand all of these things to be able to launch ourselves off until the next 50 years. Let's launch ourselves off to when many of us will not be here anymore, but God still will be with his people developing his safe harbor. This is something that is bigger than us. This is God-led. This is God-inspired. Next slide. So let's just remember, this is what God has called us to. This is what God has called us to. I want to close this off with prayer, but as part of this idea of recognizing that we bring people in, we train them up and we send them out, I'd like our graduates from last night, can you come forward? I want to pray for you guys. James, Messi, Sam, Deandra, Raymond. Anybody else here? Sorry? Trish. Yes, graduated from the... Well, we're not sending you anywhere, but you still graduated. Sending you back to the office. Come on up here. Come on up. I want you guys to recognize that we love you a lot. We value you a lot. You are just as much an integral part of what it means to be Otumoetai as anything else. I know, Deandra, you've been over there at Create and everything, but we still have a lot of connection with who you are and what you've been doing, and we are so grateful that you have become and allowed God to come and be working in you, changing you, transforming you, preparing you for the work ahead that he has planned for you. Thank you. You will always have a place in our hearts. You will always have a place in connection with who we are and going forward. And we look forward to hearing all of the wonderful stories of the things that God does through you. Let's pray together. Lord, thank you for these people that have come and have submitted themselves, that have come, have willingly put themselves into your hands, into your care, to be transformed, to be changed, to be inspired by you, to be ready to go out and to share in the work in which you have. As Leon said last night, Father, talking about taking the steps outside of the boat and going on the journey where you have for them, the individual journey, the different journey, the great journey. Father, may they have learnt the lessons here of trust. May they have learnt the lessons here of faith. May they have learnt to grow and to connect. May they have learnt the lessons to open up their hearts to others, to get along with one another, to share you and all that you are, to pass on all of the great lessons of life, Father. But keep teaching them, keep growing them, keep blessing them wherever that they may be. Watch over them, Father, and bless them in their journey as they head outside of this harbour, outside of this place, outside of this time. Keep them safe, Father, in their journeys. Even though the tempest may come, protect them, guide them. May you be their sure foot in all that they are. Thank you, Father, for this time. Thank you for this church. Thank you for the blessing that Otumoetai is, not just to these people, Father, but to each one of us who sit here this morning, because you have blessed us through this church. And we are blessed. Thank you for being our God. And thank you for giving us an understanding of who you want us to be. Guide us in your paths and your ways. Lead us beside your quiet waters. Restore our souls. Through Jesus we pray. Amen.